to Scarsdale, where Alan was living after she got married in her 30s. And so from that time forward, there are no more of these letters. So we don't really know what she was thinking. But I assume that, like all artists, she was concerned with her posterity and how people would look at her work in the future, and she didn't want things around that she wasn't proud of.
But she has such a great multitude of work, and it's all very good. Why would she think that, well, this is good and this isn't?
One cannot know. But it's the other interesting thing about that is some of her paintings look very sketch-like, and people say, well, how do you know, why is this a finished painting and not a sketch? And one of the reasons is that she kept it. She didn't destroy it, and so she must have felt that these were all worthy in some way. The other reason they're sketch-like, and I can talk about that later, but it's come up now, so I'll mention it now, was that she worked very quickly. Her husband put out a series of 4 books about her work just after she died. And he writes that they would go to, they traveled a lot, as you know, and as you can see from some of the work she did, and she would do 2 or 3 pictures in a day. She would just go to a place, open her, case, start, I think he said she started with the sky, and she would just do, and then it was done. And that was her way. So they do look sketch-like, but she considered them completed work. Yes?
I read that in some of the material, that this isn't, you're going to help educate me, I guess. She sketched out, let's say plein air. But was it finished there, or did she then finish it in the studio?
No, it was often finished in the outside. So more, so she went beyond what a lot of the other Impressionists we know of, the French Impressionists, did. So I grouped these 3 together because they are emblematic of the diversity of styles in which she worked. Now, she primarily, I think she enjoyed working more in the style of these, of the cup of tea in the middle here, and that's one of the reasons we call her an American Impressionist. But she did enjoy working in a variety of styles, which we will see as we go through. So I think let's move this direction. Yes.
Would she have seen this in her lifetime? Would she have seen this
type of thing?
Yes.
Yes, she would have, because she went to, not when, I don't think, yes, by the time she painted this, she was in Europe, she would have been to the Louvre and to all.
And this is what they wore in that time.
I think some of them, she was painting traditional Brittany, when you point out that these were done, this was the beginning and that was the end of her most productive years in working in England. And here she outlines, or makes very clear every brick, every stone, the branches, the leaves on these bushes. It's all very clearly delineated. She attempts to indicate the expressions on these women's faces. You can see noses and eyes and mouths, and it's all, very, very realistic. But if you look, but I guess since it's hard for us all to move back and forth, I'll try to just concentrate on this first and then that one. Despite the realism of the style, it's not very animated, it's not very lively. On the contrary, the watercolor that you see over here, Minehead, is, first of all, much more loosely brushed. She uses the paper to present a development, although she went back and forth. That these women, there's not a face among these people. These are just, blah, blah. But you can just, they are animated. You know they've been talking to each other. You know they've been exchanging the news of the day. You can see this child, pulling on her nurse's hand. These men in the background are, having some very important argument, I'm sure. So it's much more lively and exciting, and there's still the concern with showing you, real houses, real people. We're not, we're not in any abstract world, but it's a much more exciting and animated scene. And she did it, I think, by loosening things up. And using, you can see, in watercolors, obviously, you can see the brush much more, the effect of the brush than you can in some oils. But you can really see that here. She was very, these lovely purple shadows were very creative, and she combined colors to achieve this feeling. So that's, an example of her working in these very different modes, only a few years apart. And then if you contrast that with the Luxembourg Gardens, which is that painting on the far right at the end, you can see that, again, she's much more relief. You wouldn't see every branch, but you really get a feeling for what that park was like. And that these, again, I don't know if we can all get a little closer to it. That,
Excuse me, Tracy. Excuse me.
These children, again, with no faces, but you can tell they're excited, they're talking to each other, they're getting ready to play, and also there's a certain sense of grandeur that she's been able to create here by depicting these trees as shadows, in effect. That these people, these small people, are about to enter this place with these great trees that's very manicured, very, with very formal spaces and a wall. And you get all that with these very visible daubs of paint, no outlines, no leaves, but you know these are trees. So I think she was very, very talented at using these various methods, many of which we call Impressionist. Are there any questions about this portion of things? Okay, so I also want to go back now
I have a
to
question.
New York paintings. Yes.
I was just, as I was passing by here, looking at these.
Set herself up. And
What about?
this is a watercolor. That's an oil. Yeah.
Do you
and
have
that's
any
an oil.
remarks on the selection and size of canvas?
I think a lot of it was just, well, two things. One was portability, since she did these outdoors, and she was a woman, I have to say. So she, and don't forget, in those days, she was wearing. This is in the late 19th century. She had on the long skirts and all the undergarments, and it was, you wouldn't be hefting things. So I think that was a lot of it, the portability, and also price. I mean, she really was not. It was a struggle. She didn't have a lot of patrons. She had one woman who was sort of chaperoning her, and who was also a patron in the sense that she introduced her to some people whom she knew in England. But Anna Brewster was also, Richards then, was also acting as this woman's companion. So it was a, sort of an odd situation, not one you would find a lot of male artists in. These were not, she didn't belong to any groups of artists. She went to school, as you probably will have read or will read, at the Art Students League in New York, and she studied with William Merritt Chase, and she went to the Académie Julian in Paris, but she never formed a group of colleagues, really. And so there wasn't she didn't have the benefit of networking that you would have with a like-minded group, and which, by the way, the Impressionists certainly had. They did hang together, and they had friends, and yeah. And she was not a man, so she couldn't belong to any of the men's clubs, which were another way of getting your work known and gathering patronage. She did exhibit of course, with dealers, mostly her father's dealers in New York. And then she also exhibited at the Royal Academy in London. But she just never really, had a big groundswell of her work being sold. She would have a few pieces maybe every year sold. And so, canvases cost money. And I think that is another important reason why she did things on a small scale.
Was her father money?
That is really a testament to how